Okay, there's a brief discussion between Camille, Barry, and myself about making pods part of the yearlies for FY24 and what that could look like. So as I understand yearlies, they are actually there's a an MR that added them. So yearlies are informed by the 3-year strategies, and like objectives and key results, each yearly is aligned to one of the 3 pillars of the 3-year strategy. There should be at least one yearly for each strategic pillar. I think pods aligns well with GitLab hosted first. That is, I think, how that comes in. And they yearly sort of contain the priorities for the fiscal year, and the annual plan contains more of a budget focus. That's how I understand it, reading the MR. And so I think there's a desire to enshrine pods as something that we want to focus on in financial year 24. And given that this is the 1-year time horizon, I think we should think about an ambitious, customer-centric yearly goal that we feel is attainable. I have some ideas. I also have a feeling that once I start saying them, there's going to be a lot of head shaking on Camille's side, but I'll start ambitiously. One idea that I had is, we know that we have to migrate ourselves onto a pod. And if we want to dog food pods, is an ambitious yearly goal to migrate at least some parts or all of GitLab's stuff onto pod 2. Is that too crazy? There's the head shaking I was looking for.
Well, at least it was a nod. It wasn't a shake.
It's true.
It was the wrong way around.
But... I was like, yeah. No, I'll re-record this with a different audio track and then just show Camille nodding. Right? Lesson learned: never nod in a meeting. No. Okay, Camille, can you vocalize this? Oh yeah. Okay. So us on pod 2 is too ambitious for a year.
So what do we think is the kind of that smaller slice we can take to achieve by the end of Q4? Where do we think we can get to? We're saying at the end of Q1 we can have a pod with, and we should be able to create a group. So if we move forward from there, what do we think Q2 will look like? What do we think Q3 will look like for Q4?
So on a very high level, I think a few things that we think or believe that need to happen, right? We will have to introduce organizations in some form or shape. And I think that should be possible by the end of this year. I don't think we will have all of the migrations in place, but I think that is a part of pods. I also think that we have to think about actually deploying a pod in production, which I think depends a lot on scalability and reliability, which I think may be the second half of the year, because I think that is a big boulder to move. And I think then the question becomes, is there sort of a state where we can already create new customers or new organizations on pod 2 while we haven't figured out all of the migration pieces for existing GitLab.com organizations? And then the question is, to me, should we say, well, in order to slow down the growth of GitLab.com, having the ability to create new customers or new organizations on pod 2 is sort of the first year, and then the ability to migrate people from or between pods or from pod 1 to pod 2 is the year after that. Is that, for example, something? Those are some of the thoughts I had.
I'm thinking, sorry, it takes time.
It's okay. I've
It's
learned.
A big question.
Yeah, I've learned to allow both of you space, so we can remain in silence for some time.
I think, like, realistically, like, we're not gonna have at the end of the year anything that can be given to the customer. Maybe we just have like roughly working application with some major things being broken still. So like it's still like I think something that is internal, and basically it's very likely that only like closer to the end of the year we're gonna be focusing on getting this somehow deployed. But the tricky part is like all of the production readiness reviews and like our interactions with the databases and like our idea how we want to mitigate the risk with the deployment and like the risk of running many pods. So from that sense, I think like I'm kind of like considering that like if you define, let's say, like a major pieces that are needed out of the pods architecture, let's say that like, okay, we have organization in place. We have mostly working router. We have mostly working basic workflows in pods. We do not yet have figured out like the correct deployment procedure and like the migration procedure, and like how it's gonna interact with others. So, I'm kind of thinking like that. Maybe the way how to describe that is like figure out like what is like the most important workflows that we want to deliver. I mean, deliver not to the customer, deliver like to this to be functional in a sense that we could start maybe using that. But realistically, I don't think anything related to the migration is gonna happen. It's kind of unlikely that we don't deploy that on the GitLab.com, but it may be like a stable part of the staging GitLab.com as a way to ensure that this is working and like we build against that. And we're just gonna have like say major workflows working. So maybe I don't know. You can run CI builds. Maybe you can go to project issues, create merge requests, and things like that. But I would not say that it's gonna be production stable in that sense that you could like locate data and assume that nothing terrible gonna happen with that. So,
I mean, if we're gonna gamify what's actually written here, right? It just says application changes. You could argue that that doesn't necessarily mean it's out there in production. It's maybe ready to be out there in production, but it doesn't. I don't read this as it has to be out there and production by the end of FY24.
I mean, to be honest, it would make a lot of sense that this is part of the production, but like in a form that we are sure that this is like not causing a harm to the pod one. Because then like we kind of make other things and other people to build against posts, and like I think it's pretty essential like that this is really like being done early, given how many things are gonna be broken. So I mean, staging is still production. It's maybe not like a user-facing production as a GitHub.com, but it's still like a production environment that we treat it as a production. And like any failure, an S1 on staging, it has like the same, almost the same impact as S1 on the GitLab.com. So,
I mean, we could. Could we say something like deliver pod 2 into staging and ensure the application is pod ready for the top 5 workflows or something like this? Because I think there are two things here, right? It's like one is the deployment mechanisms of all of this and the management, which I think is hard. And that's also a little bit that at least is, I think, out of the control of the group pods. That's maybe more on infrastructure, which doesn't mean we shouldn't address it. And the other thing is what the application actually can do. And I think that's, you could slice it like this, or you could actually focus on some kind of customer facing deliverable, which I prefer, but if that is unrealistic for a year, then maybe that's not the way to go.
yes, I mean, like the problem with the customer facing stuff is like, how much of application broken is fine. Second, like, if we like give it to the customer, we kind of lose flexibility to fix any major problems that we can like have at the development, because like 1 year for this project is still like pretty early in the development of the solution, and like we're not gonna cover like a lot of workflows in this time period, so we still gonna have to probably need to make a very structural changes after that time. So if we start locating customer stuff, like we say, okay, it's stable enough that like we cannot throw away the data, it really reduces our ability to make change significantly. So this is really hard decision when you start hosting customer data. So
do we have the concept of beta customers at GitLab?
Yes.
Okay. On SaaS?
Ish.
Okay.
Not really.
No. Okay.
What about, and I'm just throwing things out here, what about we say in a year we are ready for internal dog fooding, as in we can start to think about like have GitLab people use this in certain contexts where we need to, because then that it may be acceptable to still have a few things broken, but at least we have it ready for experimentation in a way.
Yeah, I mean, like I've got a personal account on GitLab as well as my GitLab, account. If we could be ready to have people, willing participants move over to. Well, I could just create a new account. I don't have a lot on there at the moment, but willing participants move over to the new pod, understanding that stuff could go wrong. But it's just personal accounts, so it's not necessarily anything we're trying to sell to somebody.
I don't know. I don't know how many major failures we're gonna have when we start doing user workflow, because this is probably gonna be like some indicator how hard it's gonna like to say, because like I mean like one thing is like having feature broken that it gives you like 500 error, but another thing is like having feature broken that breaks other features that you are using. And GitHub is like very interconnected organism, so it's basically, I'm worried that like we start fixing these major workflows, but someone touches a very specific toggle that breaks their experience, because like we cannot isolate these broken features enough, or like it's really hard up to the point that it's just better to fix them. So I'm basing like all my suggestions right now that like everything gonna be broken. It's very unknown. We are right now. It's really hard like to isolate things that are broken. And very likely we can only provide, let's say, a list of the specific workflows that we gonna actually validate and run QA to ensure that they are stable. But then it's still like how much GitLab being broken is fine, and like how we identify that things being broken do not create a cascading failure in the system, because this is actually something bigger of the issue. It's less of the issue on the staging, is actually a big issue on GitLab.com. So sorry, I don't have conclusive answer.
No.
I just find it
Yeah.
really hard, like, because we didn't actually yet implement something in a master.
No, and I mean, the way I understand it is we don't, like, this is a year, right? It can be fairly high level, but I don't think we should put in, we're going to have pods to accommodate X million monthly active users, because that's just not going to happen, right? And
so maybe like going through another dimension, like we have this risk identified. Maybe we should really devise our plan through those risks, that like if the risk is like organizational isolation, it's done. If the risk is like router, it's mostly working. If the risk is like some other workflows, this is what is working. And this is really like our target, like that we focus on failing fast in this year by mitigating this risk to not be a risk anymore. Because like I think like the challenge is like, if at some point we find any of these risks to be like simply impossible to move over, like then we are pretty screwed if we find that like 2 years from now. So I know that it's really nice to like to focus on workflows. Workflows are useful to discover, but I think for me the most important are the risks, like how we gonna actually like another risk is like how we gonna deploy and interact with the pod one database. If we have the answer for like these risks in this year and something working, this kind of give us a confidence in like that this is like a valid direction.
Yeah,
and it actually like gives you like a very valid, let's say, solutions, like, because if the router is a risk, we're gonna have router working. If database decomposition of the cluster by data is a risk, we're gonna work towards that. If some other is the risk, we also gonna work towards that.
And if we build that risk register, and then we can define our planning against it, right?
Yes, that would be my idea. Like,
if we can get ourselves an issue that's a risk register, get everything in there and prioritize it, and then that feeds into the quarterly and milestone planning, and then we start talking about what we can do, which is kind of where I was going to go next. Instead of talking about what we can't do, let's talk about what we can do and what can be achieved. And as we go throughout the year, then we can. I mean, when these things appear in yearlies, do we end up reporting? Is there some sort of reporting structure that's defined against it, or is it just a guidance? And not just a guidance, but is it
I think
more a guidance?
Right. I don't think we've done yearlies before.
Okay.
So at least I haven't.
As it's worded, we know we can't do this, right? That's the given. So if we start talking about then what we can do and put something like this risk register together, which, like I say, feeds into the planning, which then starts us talking about what we can do, and then if anybody wants to define this against this this yearly, then we can say, well, we look like we're kind of X%. Here's all the risks. Here's the ones that have completed. So we're X% away from achieving that yearly goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be many key results that we need in order to achieve this end goal, this yearly goal. But I think the question is, what is an ambitious goal in the end? And yes, if we can figure out what we can do in the end, then maybe we can determine from this what is the possible end state. But I think, given that this is a very short statement, I think we need to be like, I'm thinking of this like, you know, ship a prototype of pods, or create an MVC, or use some language that sort of holistically captures all of that. And then we have to be very clear on what that actually means.
Can we say that we just aim to deploy pod 2 on staging GitLab.com under the same domain? Because like, if we can do it, like, we're gonna have a lot of these risks already covered.
And is, I think, a good suggestion.
Yeah, and
it's very ambitious,
what you're talking about,
but this is also has to be ambitious.
Yes.
Yeah, because what you're talking about is what we'll get as far towards this small statement as we can, right, by the end of the year. If that's where we get to, then great. That's where we get to. And if we need to have conversations as to why we're not accommodating X million unique monthly active users yet, well, we can start saying, well, like I say, we got 70% of the way there, right? Or whatever it actually ends up being, backed by the evidence of the risks and how many of them were completed and how we planned them through the year. And then we can show all that to say, this is where we got to.
I like the succinctness of it. We could say deliver pod 2 into staging using the same domain. And I think then, that will take so much individual work, but I think it shields us against, we have to roll that out into production because it's maybe too risky for the first year, but it has a clear sort of, here is the thing that we were able to get done.
Because like a few things that are like, we know that are like, the risk is like how we interact with the cluster wide. It's really relevant for the production readiness. A lot of that stuff is not that relevant yet to the staging. So a lot of these like decisions we can still, let's say, sorry, not decisions. I think that's like the idea we should have before, but like a lot of implementations of these decisions we can actually delay to the later moment. But this is also, I think, why we are focusing on the workflow, to quickly identify various problems and the way to approach them, and basically fail fast with that. So we don't have to fix everything at that moment, but I think we need to have like a practical sense of what's gonna be broken and how.
We should talk to Josh, but I think we could maybe make that as a suggestion. And I don't think we have to merge it now, but we can make an MR and say this should be deploy pod 2 onto staging using the same domain. First iteration.
Adding asterisks with some features working.
Yes. Yeah, this code is subject to change, without notice. Not every functionality will be like working as anticipated. We take no responsibility for it.
But you have to put like a very small font size.
Yes, I just already told you, right? It's all right here. So, no, and I think that may also then trigger a discussion with infrastructure and reliability and scalability, because getting something onto staging is not easy.
I mean, they have to be tooling to deploy that. It's not gonna be straightforward. And like, we need to figure out like what kind of guarantees we offer us for the upgrades, and like how they deal with the upgrades if they fail, and some various other stuff. So deploying on staging is like big task on its own.
We have a year.
I know, but it be like short time.
Yep. Maybe I'll be fully gray in a year, depending on how this goes. No hair left. Cool. What I'll do is I have my one-on-one actually with Josh. I'll briefly float this. I'm happy to open an MR and assign it to both of you for review, and then we can take it from there.
Cool. Sounds good.
And we are even on time.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for the quick sync.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Bit scary, but also exciting. Bye-bye.
It'll all be good.